$80 billion. It's a number so massive, it almost loses meaning, right? Yet, this is the exact figure claimed as the economic footprint of a single sports organization over the last decade. It's a staggering, mind-bending projection. But the reality behind this math, well, it's far more complicated.
Welcome back to Learning with Pratik. If you're new here, I try to increase neuroplasticity by exploring a new topic every day. I do all the reading and researching so you don't have to. In today's explainer, we're looking at the architect behind those incomprehensible numbers, Gianni Infantino. Over the past 10 years, his tenure at the helm of FIFA has been defined by this really striking duality. On one hand, you have an era of absolutely unprecedented financial expansion, and on the other, an unending maze of global controversy and intense political maneuvering.
The Ascent, February 2016. So, to really understand the reshaping of world football's governing body, we have to rewind a bit, back to the halls of Zurich. And to say Gianni Infantino inherited a fractured organization, honestly, that would be a profound understatement. Picture this. It's 2015, and FIFA is completely engulfed in a historic, unprecedented corruption crisis. We're talking early morning dawn raids at the ultra-luxurious Burao Lac Hotel and sweeping, multi-million-dollar indictments led by the U.S. Department of Justice. The sheer scale of this corruption dismantled their previous leadership almost overnight. You had dozens of top officials arrested on these staggering charges: racketeering, wire fraud, systemic money laundering that allegedly spanned decades. The institution was literally bleeding credibility. It faced a desperate existential need for stabilization from the inside out, just to appease furious global sponsors and governments who were threatening to pull their funding entirely. Enter Gianni Infantino in February of 2016. See, he wasn't just elected to run a sports organization. He was brought in to salvage a rapidly collapsing global empire. And now, a full decade later, we can step back and deeply analyze the profound reshaping of FIFA that followed.
The $80 billion mirage. Unpacking the math.
Now, the most defining metric of FIFA's survival under Infantino is undeniably the money, but there's a pretty stark contrast between their projected figures and independent economic analysis. FIFA touts this monumental $80 billion in economic impact generated from its marquee tournaments. However, when sports governance researchers, like the folks at Play the Game, look at the reality, they find something highly debated and meticulously constructed. You see, economic impact math is notoriously slippery. It blends direct revenue, things like global ticket sales and broadcast rights, with highly theoretical tertiary spending. This includes vast assumptions about future tourism bumps, the long-term value of newly built infrastructure, and indirect job creation across host nations. When you roll all of these highly speculative, sometimes frankly unquantifiable figures together, the numbers act less like a hard financial ledger and more like a carefully constructed mirage. It's a mathematical narrative designed specifically to project immense, undeniable global value to potential host nations and corporate partners.
Yet even if we discount the most aggressive, theoretical economic projections, the core cash flow, the actual tangible money entering FIFA's bank accounts, is undeniable. Across the 2018 and 2020 World Cup cycles, revenue absolutely exploded. Infantino didn't just stabilize a sinking ship, he completely filled its cargo hold. And he pulled off this unprecedented financial expansion by aggressively restructuring the sport's biggest assets. He expanded tournament formats, most notably pushing the Men's World Cup to 48 teams, which drastically increases the sheer inventory of matches they can sell. He secured massive, record-breaking global broadcasting rights, and he tapped into incredibly lucrative new sovereign wealth sponsorships, particularly expanding partnerships in the Middle East. So regardless of the broader academic debates about tertiary impact, the sheer volume of incoming capital cemented his power. It proved without a doubt that he is an extraordinarily effective, ruthless revenue generator.
Defender-in-chief, navigating global scrutiny.
But as you might expect, that massive influx of capital didn't arrive in a vacuum. It came alongside an era of intense, unyielding global scrutiny. The Guardian actually captured this dynamic perfectly on the eve of the 2022 World Cup, referring to him directly as FIFA's defender-in-chief. When the organization faces international backlash, like the intense global debates we saw surrounding Qatar's labor laws, human rights records, or the environmental impact of controversial infrastructure policies, Infantino acts as the ultimate institutional shield. Rather than deflecting to public relations teams, he frequently positions himself right at the podium to absorb the blows. He's known to deliver these hour-long, highly scrutinized monologues, all aimed at redirecting the world's media attention away from host nation controversies and back toward the governance body itself. His leadership style essentially dictates that he takes the heat, allowing the underlying financial machine to just keep running uninterrupted.
It's a continuous, high-stakes cycle of crisis management, and it really illustrates the absolute friction at the heart of modern FIFA. Maximizing global revenue at this unprecedented scale requires partnering with an incredibly diverse array of global actors, which inevitably invites heavy international criticism. Infantino's daily reality is balancing on that exact precarious tightrope, acting as a constant buffer between the influx of money and the public outrage. And for you, the viewer, what this means is that the sport you watch is no longer just a game taking place on a grass pitch. It's a highly negotiated geopolitical event. The decisions made about where tournaments are played, who is allowed to sponsor them, and exactly how they are broadcast, they directly reflect shifting global power dynamics. It affects international relations and state diplomacy on a scale far, far larger than football itself.
The political playbook, power and crossovers.
So, to maintain this delicate balance, Infantino has developed a highly specific, highly effective political playbook. Under his watch, we're not just talking about sports governance anymore. This is the direct intersection of immense financial power and international diplomacy. On one hand, FIFA fiercely guards its institutional autonomy, strictly prohibiting political interference in domestic football associations. Yet simultaneously, the organization frequently fields direct appeals from world leaders at the absolute highest levels of government. A fascinating specific example of this actually occurred when Donald Trump, during his presidency, personally called Infantino to appeal on behalf of American soccer star Fuller and Balogun. Think about that for a second. The leader of the free world, utilizing international diplomatic back channels just to discuss a striker's national team eligibility. It's surreal, but it's the perfect illustration of how deeply entrenched FIFA has become in the halls of global statecraft.
This single, remarkable interaction really maps out FIFA's entirely new landscape. We're looking at direct, leader-to-leader diplomacy, where state interests directly intersect with sporting outcomes. Nations are actively leveraging the World Cup's massive, unparalleled global influence to project soft power and legitimize their governments on the world stage, a practice frequently analyzed and debated by human rights organizations as sports washing. But from a purely operational standpoint, engaging directly with heads of state is now practically mandatory for FIFA's financial survival and expansion. Under Infantino's tenure, this intense crossover between global capital, sports, and elite politics isn't some accidental side effect. It is the defining, structural feature of the organization's modern operating model.
A reshaped FIFA, 10 years later.
And so we arrive at the present day, a fundamentally transformed FIFA, 10 years after the devastating crisis that first brought Infantino to power. It's an organization anchored by an undeniable financial boom, yet inextricably tied to a high-stakes, perpetual political tightrope. After a decade of massive structural changes, controversial tournament expansions, and an $80 billion economic mirage that continues to drive its global ambitions, we have to ask a final question. After all this time, has Gianni Infantino actually saved FIFA? Or has he simply reshaped its controversies for a completely new era of geopolitical sports? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, especially if you have something particular in mind. Thanks for watching. Tomorrow, we open a different page. Until then, Pratik, out.